Hi, it's John Anderson here, and I'm here with professional investor and best-selling property author Helen Collier-Kogtevs. So, recently I just got back from Sydney, and I remember I was in Sydney 12 months ago, and I'd asked the taxi drivers, how's the property market going? They're like, oh, I'm trying to get in, I'm getting my deposit together, I'm using my equity. And this time I said, how's the property market going? He's going, oh, big bubble, big bubble. So I'm not sure if the sentiment's shifting, but it certainly seems like that could be the way. But what is your thoughts on, the big markets, the Sydney and Melbourne market? Is there a bit of a bubble emerging, or is there value to be found?
Both, John. I think there's both happening. Firstly, because look, prices in both Sydney and Melbourne are getting up there, and really at the end of the day, it's all about affordability. And I often find that Sydney in particular, it works in cycles like every other market, but Sydney in particular, you can tell maxes out as soon as it hits that affordability bracket. Now, the problem with that is once it's hit that bracket, it could take up to 5 years for wages to catch up. So even though people will get a big burst and they'll say, Sydney, it's booming, it's growing by 20%, and, all of the media is, in hysteria over it, at the end of the day, it's all about that affordability. Now, one of my biggest bugbears with any capital city is that people go in for the blue chip in inverted commas, right? And blue bloody chip often means really expensive. And what people don't factor in is, okay, I'll go and buy that $800,000 property or that $1 million property, but who the bloody hell can afford to, A, rent it, because the rent you're going to need on it is really high. How many people can afford a rent on an $800,000 or $1 million property? Versus when it comes to selling it, it just slices and dices your market. So you're left with a very narrow slice of the cake when it comes to selling it. For me, that's insanity. I would rather own two properties valued at $400,000 to $500,000 that I could rent to at least 30% of the population. And when it comes to selling, there are more people that can afford to buy my property. So in just one fell swoop, I've lowered my risk by buying two properties for the same sort of money. And I've got more people that can afford to rent my property 365 days of the year. And this is the thing that really kind of just drives me crazy as an investor, is when I see investors going into the market, spending up to $1 million on property, going, hey, I'm an investor, aren't I great? So as far as Melbourne and Sydney goes, yep, I think there are certain areas in those capital cities that have truly maxed out. But there is value to be found. There is certainly value to be found. And it's really now about being strategic.
So would you be looking in, obviously, you're a due diligence-based investor, you'd be letting the numbers guide you, but as a starting point to your research, would you be looking at some of the outer suburban growth areas, or is that, would that be a generalisation, or?
Again, yes and no. Yes, you have to obviously go a little bit further out where it's more affordable, but you don't want to just go willy-nilly to any area.
Where there could be oversupply or social problems.
Or no infrastructure. So it's got to meet some key criteria, and one is
family friendly. Families have got to want to move there, and
well, quite often, like even here in Melbourne, some of the outer areas of Melbourne, people are moving there in droves. Why? Because it's cheap.
Yeah, it's affordable.
It's affordable. Is it family friendly? No, it's just affordable.
It's friendly that they can afford a home there.
Yeah, but still, there's nothing out there.
Yeah.
You want to
McDonald's. That's pretty much it.
And that's kind of on the bypass. But it's just got to be. It's got to have infrastructure, schools, hospitals. Shopping, restaurants, cafes.
So a bit of lifestyle.
It's got to have some lifestyle, John. Otherwise, what's the point of living out in the middle of the sticks with nothing around you? So there's value and then there's value.
So I suppose what you're saying is with the $1 million price tag, there's only a small selection of people that are in the bracket that can afford that rent. And then if you're looking to sell, there's only a certain amount of people that can buy it. And I suppose it's that whole thing of, whenever you're buying an investment, if you're waiting for an investor that can buy more and that's the only way that you get a return, you've got perhaps an issue to look at, because that's like the definition of a bubble almost, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely.
Like that's what happened with the tulips. It was all based on maybe someone will buy it for a bigger price, so people are paying thousands of dollars for tulips. So It's about finding that value. Well, look, that's been really instructional. So thanks so much, Helen.
No worries, thanks, John.